All right, good evening. Welcome to the regularly scheduled board meeting for the School District of Belleville here on Monday, July 12th. We'll call this meeting to order at 6:37 this evening. With Marion absent this evening, we'll have Mike take the roll call.
All right. Jill Remy,
Here.
Trevor Johan,
Here?
Ryan Kubley.
Here.
Barb Peterson.
Here.
Marion Vinny. William Monroe.
Here.
Mike Treader, here. 6 present.
Thanks, Mike. All right, first up, if there is support for an agenda approval.
I'll second.
First by Ryan, a second by Jill. All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Any noes? All right, motion passes 6-0. Next up this evening would be visitor comments. We didn't have anybody listed for visitor comments this evening.
Would this be a good time for our visitors?
Let's
Trevor?
keep going on. Yeah,
Okay.
let's talk.
All right. The last few meetings, what we have tried to do is to highlight some of our student successes. We haven't probably done that well enough as a board in the past. We do have some fantastic students here that have achieved at a very high level, and so we want to spotlight them from time to time. The first person, hopefully I don't embarrass him too much, I'd like to introduce to the board James Gustafson. If James would come up to the mic. I told James's mom that he wouldn't have to speak or anything like that. One, I want to introduce him to the board because James has already started as a youth apprentice for the district, so as a district employee in the IT department. So he's already been working with Mr. Edge. The reason, not only to introduce the board to our new employee, but to really give a shout out to James, because one of the reasons that we hired him in this position is that he's really good at what he does. He was enrolled in Mr. Farrar's computer science, Project Lead the Way computer science course, and scored a perfect 600 on his end of the year course, which means that doesn't happen very frequently, but he could get credit from either the Milwaukee School of Engineering or St. Cloud State University. So I think we hired him, Mr. Edge, before we knew he had scored perfectly on the Project Lead the Way computer science test. But it's a great marriage between the district and our students and our youth apprenticeship program, because James is already doing fantastic work with Mr. Edge and Mr. Armstrong and Mrs. Jevney. We wanted to introduce him to the board, congratulate him on his perfect score, and I'm not sure if the board has anything to say or any questions for James.
I think that's awesome. Congratulations on that and the hard work. I could only imagine too that in your spare time it's probably a big hobby for you as well. So no, congratulations. Absolutely for making that happen.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Good job.
Thank you.
How do you enjoy the job so far, James?
I'm enjoying it, so it'll be good.
Do you want to tell the board just maybe a little bit, without putting you on the spot, about what you've done so far as part of your duties?
Well, what I've done so far is basically sorting things out before the new school year starts. But come August, once the school year starts to pick up, I'll probably end up doing more things related to problems teachers may have, or just getting Chromebooks or other devices ready for the school year. So
That's great. I mean, I'm sure everybody appreciates that, and IT is a great field to get into, and it's ever expanding. So keep it up.
Not sure. It's going to fluctuate based on what's needed and how the school year is looking, since it's changing pretty much every day. So, anything else?
Are you
Excellent.
are you a big fan of the Python programming language?
I'm a big fan after doing it for an entire course, and I enjoyed it, so it's fun. At all? Thank you.
Thanks, James.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And thanks to
Thanks to the
coming
parents
out
for
too.
bringing them in too. Thank you.
Next up, I would introduce the Sugar River Raider boys and girls track and field coach, Willie Johnson. Willie has got a couple of his athletes with him this evening. Matthew Loshaw could not be with him, but in this again, kind of hectic world of sports in 2020-21, Willie did have his team had a relay qualify, and then I see Carter here tonight. Carter also had qualified individually. When Carter had qualified for the individually for the state cross country meet, we did have a little bit of celebration here, a little bit just disjointed. So we also want to recognize Carter. He's a fantastic athlete, is already now qualified individually twice, both in cross country and in track. So Mr. Johnson, you can have the floor.
Thanks, everybody. Mr. Perry asked me how long my speech was. It's this long because we don't do things slow in track and field. But first and foremost, thank you to the board and administration for having us come up here and speak on behalf of the Sugar River Track and Field program. Believe it or not, it was over 600 days before we had our first practice in the second week of April. So you can just imagine what it was like just to, have kids in the gymnasium and try to configure out all the restrictions that we had. But the first couple weeks of practice were great. We had maybe about 2/3 of our kids there because not only did Carter have such great success in cross country, but also the New Glarus boys and girls made it to cross country state as a team. And then with the football teams going, a couple weeks into our practice, it was just great experience for those kids. And then as soon as we got everybody back on board, it was just fun to watch how they came together as not only a program, but two schools, sports to coming together, and even the coaches, trying to make sure that the kids were all together and inclusive and things like that. So yeah, like I said, it was over 600 days before we had our first track practice or could get together. And before we knew it, that the track season was off and running. Usually we have 2 to 3 weeks before our first meets, but then Monroe contacted us and we had our actually first meet like a weekend practice. So talk about helter-skelter and try to get everything ready that we could in a timely manner. But just to go over a couple highlights of this last season, the girls were the Capital South Conference dual champs again, and they finished third at the Big Deerfield Classic meet this year, and that was both with limited rosters for the girls, whether we were dealing with injuries or kids away and things like that. We also had another record broke. That's kind of like one of our goals as coaches, to break a record every season. Ava Foley ended up breaking the long jump record. She ended up jumping 16 feet 10 inches at probably one of the worst, crappiest meets that we had with weather-wise. But then she ended up jumping over 17 feet at the sectional meet in Whitewater. She jumped like 17 feet 1 3/4, which, to tell you, was not good enough to get her to the state meet. There was a girl that jumped 18 feet and then 3 other girls that jumped a little bit better than she did. But she's got her goals set next year that she's going to make it in both long and triple jump. This past season, we had 3 first all-conference athletes: Carter Sholey in the 3,200 meter run, Dana Carls from New Glarus in the 400 meter run, and then Ava Foley also she ended up winning the triple jump. We had 10 second team all-conference athletes, ranging from the boys 4x8, the girls 4x8 relays, the girls 4x100 meter relay. We also had another young lady finish or earn second team all conference in the 100 and 200 meter dash. Ava also finished third. Second in the long jump, so she ended up earning first team all conference in both of those. And then also Taylor Yap in the 3,200 meter run as well. Again, for us, it was an exceptional season dealing with the circumstances that we had. The girls tied for the girls placed 5th in the conference meet and that's the North and the South teams competing together. Interesting enough, the girls finished out of 4th place by 0.03 of a point. So when we always tell our individual kids that we got a spot for you, that if we would have had another athlete place eighth in an event, that would have been 1 point that would have put us over into 4th place. The boys tied for 8th. And again, I think as things get back to where we'd like them to be, we're going to be able to compete with those other teams from the north. And like Mr. Perry said, we have 2 members of the boys 4x800 meter team that competed up at the state track meet this year, Jordan Wilder and Carter Sholey. The guys didn't necessarily finish as well as they wanted to, but I think just the experience in itself, getting up there and competing in Division II track and field is something to be not ashamed about. We did have one senior on the team, that relay team, so I think that there's kids vying for that other position, and I can almost guarantee you that those kids are going to be up there again next year. And Carter also did compete in the 3,200-meter run. Carter is probably one of the most studious athletes that I've had in my 21 years of coaching track and field here in Belleville. Coming home from the sectional meet in Whitewater, he had his phone up and he was watching. He was watching other meets, so he's a kid that really prepares for himself, not only mentally, but physically. And I know his 3,200-meter run didn't end the way he wanted it to, but after I talked to Carter on the way home and after we were eating, he's like, yep, I'm ready for next year already. So just to go, to see what kind of athlete he is. And I can guarantee you, he's not only going to be there in the 3,200-meter next year and the 4x8, but I think he could actually almost be up there in 3 different. So overall, it was a fantastic season. And not only, I'm speaking on behalf of the coaching staff, we're excited to continue, to take the Raider track and field program that next step and to be able to compete and whatever else with everybody in Division II.
Yeah. Thanks, Willie, for
you.
coming in tonight, sharing that.
Yeah.
No, and congratulations. I mean, for being such a chaotic year to be able to still pull together, and hit the accomplishments, the highlights that you just listed there. I mean, that's a lot of energy. And to get the kids conditioned in that short amount of time too, so that there's no injuries. So, no, congratulations to you guys and to all the students. Thank you. Thank you
Thank you.
guys for coming in tonight too. Thank you. Keep up the good work. I know, I was thinking the same thing.
Just
That was-
really small.
I was thinking the same thing. All right. Nate, thanks for bringing and letting them shine for a minute in front of us. It really shows to the great accomplishments that are happening in the district. Yeah, thank you. No,
All right. Generation of track stars.
Yeah. All right, moving on then this evening, we've got the approval of the consent agenda. Is there a All right, a first by Ryan,
I'll second it.
a second by Jill. All in favor, say aye. Or yes, I'm
Yes.
sorry. Yes. Any noes? All right, motion passes 6-0. All right, then, with that said, then we'll move on to reports this evening. I just want to give the board a quick little update before we get into the reports. We've got quite an agenda this evening, so I've asked Nate to try to just kind of keep it to highlight bullet points. But obviously, if there's any questions by the board, discussion, let's let all that happen. But kind of keep Nate to the bullet points of the topics for this evening.
Just a few topics to update the board on. Summer school, we haven't had summer school now in 2 years, so we're back in person with summer school. Typically, we'd have about 500 students. We're back over that number this year, which is fantastic news to us. We do get state funding based on how many students that we have in summer school. So a healthy, vibrant summer school program is great financially for the district and, again, for the community. Some students need that connection during the summer. Offers employment for our regular staff as well, and for parents, a little bit of time that they can maybe run some errands, get some things done around the house without their students there, at least in the morning time. So summer school is really doing well, back to where it was and even beyond 2 years ago. In terms of the pool, remember the pool was also closed down last summer. So Jean is at Run for Fun tonight, but she has been obviously actively involved as the pool director in getting the pool back up and running. Kelsey, of course, has helped out, Teresa Voss, Steve O'Connor, making sure that it was up and running on time. There have been some issues with the pool, have been down for more than a year. Some issues with the heater, trying to make sure that we got our chemicals balanced properly. That's been a little bit easier in the large pool rather than the kid pool. One's chlorine, one's bromine. but things are finally at a place where we really feel good about that. The other thing that I would mention is because there were no swim lessons last year, you have a lot of students in level 1 swim classes that hopefully will even out over the next couple of years as just one crop of level 1 swimmers will come in next year. Great news is, again, thank you to the board for increasing that wage for the lifeguards. Jean has 11 new lifeguards with us this summer. They're energetic, they're young, and as you're training any new employees, there's some things to be learned. But if we can retain those students and they come back year after year, hopefully even into college, it really helps train new employees. It really puts this pool in a great position in the years to come that we'd have that many students, employees back working in the summers. And again, they're young, but they're enjoying it. And Jean, of course, is really good at working with our students and, just letting them know here are our expectations and this is what we need you to do. We did have a district leadership retreat among the administrative team. Some of the things that we were able to accomplish was to set up our August in-service when teachers come back to school in second and third week of August. We set up new teacher orientation. Of course, the board has approved a lot of different positions over the last few months, so we'll have quite a few new teachers that we will bring into the system August 17th. We also went over the registration process, looked at the PD calendar, started to plan that out. Again, are working on our 3-year strategic plan as well, which after it is reviewed by Joe Schrader, will also get board input and then public input on as well. One thing I wanted to be real clear with was our Jedi decision. So when the board had a special meeting after our last regular meeting in June, we met the following Thursday. And in the meantime, for those that didn't see that meeting, we did quite a bit of contacting parents, homeschooled parents, parents that had expressed an interest in the Jedi school initially. And when that interest really had dwindled in that next month or so from May into June, the board had used that data not to go forward with using the Jedi school as a virtual model. So just to be clear to parents, our staff, there will be no virtual option for our students going into next year, which means our teachers will be teaching in the classrooms face-to-face. There will be no hybrid teaching. There'll be no virtual teaching. Now, that said, Kelsey and Heather, if they get individual cases, and there might be some, it could be because of a health plan, it could be because of some extenuating circumstances. As always, we will work with families, look for programming that will work for them. But we really do anticipate with what has happened recently that we will start the school year fairly regularly. Our COVID numbers are extremely low. There's multiple different ways that we're monitoring that. We still look at just the Belleville census tract. We look at the 4 tracts around us. We also can look at just the school district data, which just isn't our students, but everyone in that population of about 5,000. And the numbers have been extremely low. In the school district itself, you'd have to go all the way back to late May since we had a positive case. Just checked again today. I check on a daily basis, but they're not updating numbers over the weekends anymore, so things start to catch up over the weekends. But in terms of what the outlook looks like for next year, we anticipate our teachers having a fairly regular year in the classroom. The last thing that I wanted to touch on was Johnny O's. And John Sunderledge, who's the owner, has done quite a bit, for those that aren't familiar, with different community organizations. And he and I had several conversations about something that we might be able to do for the school district. And Marie Perry, the communications director, and I met with John. This was back in late April. And he came up with the idea of a Wildcat pizza. It's as simple as it can be. It's a pepperoni and sausage pizza. And he said, if the district is willing to promote that and people buy it, then I'm going to donate quite a bit. It's $4 per pizza of any size, first Wednesday of the month, that he'll donate back to the district. And then $2 for every Wildcat pizza after that. So we have tried to promote that on our social media. I think it's good for a local business. It's good for the district. John, just in May alone, should say Johnny O's, had already donated just in May $142 to the district. That went into the elementary school activity account. Kelsey can decide as more money comes in how she wants to address that. We've already talked about field trip scholarships, some of those things that could be used. And so, again, it's a benefit both to the local business, but also to the school district that this money is coming in, and community supporting both. Questions on any of those topics? One.
Did he have any specific requests as to what it would be used for? And he said general fund or
No, of course, we'd like it to go back to anything that can help out students, and that's why the field trips came in, depending on what we see the needs for next year. Again, for right now, when you look at the activity accounts, there's a imbalance between the middle and high school activity account, which has been around for years, and the elementary activity account, which is fairly newly established by Kelsey. So we're trying to create that account with a little larger balance for the elementary school.
Any other questions for Nate? Great. Now with Marion being absent this evening, we'll get caught up in next month's first CISA 2 report then. All right. Then for that was it for reports this evening. Moving on to discussion of possible action items, and that would be first up would be talking and discussing about the Wildcat Way Pass.
And I do have Mrs. Schmitz. I think she's on this meeting. At least I can see her on my meet. And Mr. Loshaw is here as well. So just a brief history about where we have been with a similar type of pass. When the middle and high school went to the AB schedule, 2015-16, one of the pieces that was added back into that schedule to make it work were study halls. Part of the concern was that with students taking more classes at once, they would need some time to be able to access teachers, to be able to have some time to do some work in school so that they could still have a job, be involved in clubs and activities and sports outside of school. Initially, when I was the middle and high school principal, I had come to the board to get approval for that because we were going to release seniors based on behavior, attendance, and grades so that those study halls were smaller, and therefore the teachers that had those study halls could check in on their students, make sure that if it didn't look like they had anything to do, that they were checking grades and saying, hey, I think you've got some work missing in this class that you could be working on right now, even contacting teachers to do that. This Wildcat Pass is similar in some ways, different in others. One of the needs at the middle and high school, but particularly the high school, is that we don't have as many students in interventions as we would like to get that help. Of course, we don't want students in interventions, but those students that might be in the bottom 25th, bottom 20th, bottom 15th percentile in both reading and math, or one or the other, we'd like to be able to get some extra help. And there's not enough time in schedules or enough interventionists freed up to do that. What Heather and Kyle's proposal is then is to take our high school English and high school math teachers, remove them from a study hall duty. Therefore, they would be free to do either a literacy or a math intervention with students, again, that may not be getting an intervention right now, but be able to reduce those study hall numbers, we have to have fewer students in study hall. So the proposal before you, and again, Kyle and Heather can answer some of those questions for you. They've really set up a system that's twofold. One, it's based on student performance, and that's both in attendance and in academics. So if a student, second semester of their sophomore year into their junior year, where they can drive and physically leave campus during their study hall, if they qualify, they would be released from the study hall, again, bringing up our teachers to do these interventions with students. The good news of that is that it is also a motivator for our students. So, for example, part of what you need to be able to qualify is a proficient score in the Aspire test. Now, typically, a student might take the Aspire test and say, it's not the ACT, it's not, colleges aren't looking at this. What's the incentive for me to do well? Well, The incentive is you're showing you're proficient, and it's going to help you to qualify for this Wildcat Pass. There's also the incentive, not just on a test, but for your regular grades to stay off the pass list, which affects eligibility, but also to be on the honor roll, either the B or the high honor roll, called the regular honor roll, high honor roll, so that you're proving yourself in terms of grades in the classroom as well. And then there's an attendance piece. Mr. Loshaw has dealt with attendance for the past year. Sometimes, unless a student gets to truancy, there's not maybe a lot of incentive for them to come and clear up absences, make sure that they're not tardy to class. This is another incentive for them if they've got an unexcused absence, if they've got a tardy, to try to clear that up with Mr. Schmidt and Mr. Loshaw in the office every morning. And so really does a couple things. It gets our students interventions, but at the same time provides some incentive for those other students because it is the senior responsibility pass has been very popular with those seniors. When I was middle and high school principal, every single student of the month lunch that we would have, when we'd ask what's going well, what's not going well, what's going well, almost every time, senior responsibility pass. It does provide some motivation. It keeps us on track. It's a good way to earn some privileges. So I can give it up to Mr. Loshaw, and if Mrs. Schmitz is on, I could try to relay some things. But if the board has questions on that as well, we'll get a few of those in when the board packet was sent out. But if they have others, I'm sure either myself, Mrs. Schmitz, or Mr. Loshaw could.
And I'll just add one thing to that. It's still going to be required to have parent consent. So just because they meet all these needs doesn't mean that they just get to leave automatically. We are still going to require conversations with parents to make sure the parents are aware beforehand. So just kind of add that as a piece.
Thank you for clarifying that, because that was a big component of the senior responsibility pass. And there's some parents that don't want their students to participate, want them to stay in school, and that's completely fine. So one block, which would be 80 minutes.
Do they have to have a driver's license?
You want to answer that, Kyle?
It is not a requirement. No, it is just going to be up starting a second semester sophomore year.
Okay.
Hopefully the strong majority of our students would have it or have the
Okay.
ability to travel somewhere.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of wondering is like, what, if they don't, or can they, I mean,
So
what
one of the
would they do
concerns,
if they
yeah.
didn't have a driver's license?
So one of the concerns that, and I'm not sure if Kyle wants to speak to this, but one of the concerns we have with the senior responsibility pass is we don't want a senior just wandering around the building
Mhm.
without a place to go, because typically that's not a productive time.
Right.
So
right.
with that, if you were going to take it, you were leaving, and usually it was on either side of lunch. It was first thing in the morning, so you had to come in a little late. It was last hour of the day, so you had to leave a little bit early.
Mhm.
And again, that's part of the reasons why it's so popular. I think still in this case, correct me if I'm wrong, Kyle, but if they're signing up for it, they need to leave the building at that point in time.
Yeah, they need to have the ability. We don't want them to just feel like then all of a sudden they have this freedom to roam out the building and distract
Yeah.
other students. So yes, it is going to be required that
I don't want
they
them
do
just
leave the
thinking
building.
either too, like just roaming around the village, like, that can be the same thing as,
Well,
you know.
Yeah, and I
roaming
think
around
that's
the
where
village.
we're putting our trust in our students to know that they're
Yeah.
going to make the best decisions possible. And we also hope that we'll have communication if that ever becomes an issue, because students, just because they meet the requirements of our responsibility, our Wildcat Way Pass, doesn't mean they're going to just keep that. It can be taken away at any point. It is something we hope it wanted to earn that shows the respectful and positive behaviors of our students.
And I suspect if it's around lunchtime, they're probably going out and getting lunch, probably at one of the area businesses too as well.
In all these years now of the senior responsibility pass, I can't think of one instance where I had a complaint, whether it was from somebody in the community or another parent, about somebody doing something illegal or disrespectful when they were coming to and from school.
And that's kind of why I asked, well, why it could be taken away, not meeting the criteria anymore, but if you get a complaint, I'm assuming it'd just be taken up as a case-by-case basis in terms of this meets, some sort of a threshold that we don't want you to be roaming around anymore.
Yes, yeah. I mean, we built these up our initials of what they can do to meet it. And yeah, I think it'd be really hard for us to write in like very specific things that they do outside of it. But yes, it will be a case-by-case determination by Heather and myself.
I think overall, I mean, I think this is a great idea. I mean, anytime we can get more interventions in place to help the students that need this support, I mean, I think this is, me personally, just speaking, I think this is a great idea. And I know this, I think back to my days in, high school, I would have, much like Belleville and Parkview, to be able to get away from the building for a little while, I mean, yeah, that would have been nice.
The other
There's
thing
just
that we
one
did- go
last
ahead,
thing
Ken.
I can add. It's just going to give us another opportunity to build positive relationships between our students and staff. It just
Yeah.
gives them another opportunity. For some of our students who struggle in school, they struggle to build relationships with 25 kids in the classroom. They don't like being known that they struggle. Instead, we're going to give them this small opportunity to build a strong relationship with a small group of students and a teacher who is an area that they need. And then we hope will show growth in our overall ACT scores and other avenues, and hope just kind of provide that extra area of support that we can't create elsewhere. So we're hoping this could do it for us. I don't have that in front of me. I don't know if Nate's presenting that.
I would imagine it does vary from, now just in reading and math, I believe that's a 21 for both. I'd have to look that up, but I believe it's 21. There's one that's 20. I want to say it's higher than that, but I'm not sure which area.
Yeah, when we run our reports, it just provides it for us. So I don't pay attention to exactly the number, but I think you're pretty close to it. Yeah.
I believe when I spoke with Heather this morning, she does have ACT Aspire data now,
Yep.
and believe that between those that would be eligible in the sophomore and junior class, we would already have, just based on that data, the Aspire data, I think 74 students that would qualify. Correct. It's got to be it's got to be a proficient score. Yeah, and that does vary between the different subtests in ACT. The other thing that I wanted to mention is when Heather and Kyle were coming up with this, remember initially the board had looked at staffing and looked at, could we afford to hire an interventionist at the high school? And when we prioritized where are the needs, that didn't come up as the highest. And so they came up with this idea that doesn't increase staffing, add staffing, and still addresses some of the needs. So it's some creative thought on their end.
I also think it's a good opportunity to give these younger students a chance to show a level of maturity and show a level of responsibility. I think that can be a really positive thing for them at an age, I mean, second half of sophomore year, it can go either way with some kids. So I think that's really good to kind of give them an incentive to fly right.
Absolutely.
I have a question about the number of kids. So what's the threshold that we have to hit to make this successful? Like, we need 50 kids total to buy into this, to have the
We haven't
room.
dove specifically into that looking because we want to make sure it got approved first, but we can be very flexible because we still are going to have study halls, as we're still going to have plenty of ninth grade students. We're still going to have sophomores and juniors who are not going to meet this. So we're still going to have plenty of space for it. I don't think we are worried for a while about having a minimum threshold for this. We hope, as we continue to motivate our students to just continue to excel in what they do, we have to look at maximums or making more restrictions potentially as they have a goal, this goal to reach. As for some of our students, things like the ACT Aspire, we can tell them how important it is and how it's going to help them, but it's just a number to them until they become juniors and they realize it's very reflective of the ACT score. So it's a great opportunity for us to kind of help motivate in different areas. Yeah, Mike, it's a great question and we'll keep working on that. Heather might have an answer as I hear her type into the Google chat.
We'll see. Yes. Heather, did you want to speak? You should be able to be heard at least by the board.
Yeah, so we right now, based on this spring's STAR testing, and as Nate said, looking at roughly that 25% threshold, those are what we call our tier 2 intervention students that we have not been thoroughly able to support in the last 2 years, just based on our resources. If we would like to get all of those students in an intervention this fall, it would roughly take 3 English teachers and 2 math teachers. So 5 to be decreased by 5 study halls. And they only have a study hall. Teachers only support a study hall once out of a 2-day, like an A-B schedule. They only have a one study hall, but students have 2 study halls over those 2 days. So we roughly need 10 students per teacher. So about 50 students who would want to in order to be able to service all of the students that would meet that criteria. If we don't have enough students to parents and students, we definitely have enough students that meet those 4 out of 5 requirements. If we didn't have enough parents to agree to the Wildcat Way Pass, then we would cut our percentage down. Instead of the bottom 25%, we'd probably look more at the bottom 20%. So it does depend on what resources, but I would say roughly 10 students per study hall that we would cut would need to qualify.
And Heather, while we have you, proficiency scores for Aspire, 21 across the board, or are there others that differ? Predictor scores.
They do differ. I could pull that up. It's hard. Sorry. Just so you guys know, I can hear Nate very well on here. It's hard to hear the rest of you. So I'm trying to listen to the YouTube feed and Nate at the same time. So I get a little bit of a lag. But it is different for proficiency. And so how we based those cut scores, when I looked at all of the Aspire, in order for a student to meet that Aspire proficiency, they had to be proficient or advanced in all 4 categories. So science, math, reading, 5, sorry, take that back. Science, math, reading, writing. No, that's at 4. Science, math, reading, writing. They had to be proficient or advanced in all 4 of them. If they were a basic in 1 out of the 4, they didn't meet that criteria. That does not mean necessarily that they wouldn't meet the criteria for the Wildcat Way Pass, because Aspire could be that 1 out of 5 categories that they did not meet if they met all of the other 4.
Thank you, Heather.
Thanks, Heather.
Is there any other discussion among the board on this topic? Is there a motion to support?
I'll make a motion to approve the Wildcat Way Pass as presented.
First by Mike, a second by Ryan. All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Any noes? All right, motion passes 6-0.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you. Okay, next up on the agenda this evening is the elementary playground equipment installation approval.
So one of the lessons that we had learned from the pandemic is what it looks like outside at the elementary school at recess. I know Kelsey is going to join us. Having spent some time down there at that time, as you know, with the add-ons and the remodel of the old intermediate school, now the elementary school, we had taken out some still really productive playground equipment that was supposed to be sold to the district for $1, and then we had reinstalled new playground equipment. This year, when you had recess and lunch at the elementary, and I won't go into too much detail because Kelsey could probably add more to it, you would have a group that was down on the elementary playground. You'd have another group up by the pool, and then you had a third group up on the soccer field, sometimes soccer, sometimes football, and then the Gaga pit. So you really had students and supervision in 3 different areas. In that middle area we're talking about by the pool, there's not a whole lot to do. So they would, Kelsey's done and try to do a great job at, getting some things for them, asking what would you like to, play with, ordering some things, but there's still not a lot there. This first came up probably in the spring months once kids got back outside. We had more kids in school, and we saw that need. There's We even heard it from our playground supervisors. They need more to do. And so we did inquire with the village. At the time, it was Brian Wilson. We did double check. I don't think, according to our records, the village ever paid us the $1 for that equipment. We again checked again that it was still in storage down by the sewer plant. It's actually, most of it's on pallets. Even inspected it further. It's in really pretty good shape still. We had to do a little bit of archaeology on how old that equipment is. The other thing that we found out is when they removed it, they did not cut it off, which is the biggest factor here. We probably wouldn't be talking to you about this had they just cut it off and then buried the rest of it. They actually pulled it up, which means that all the lengths are all the same. So then we started to do some inquiries. Kelsey and Steve O'Connor. Gerber was a company that had originally put it in. There's another company, Commercial Recreational Services or Specialists, excuse me, that does work like this. And so what we found out is it's still quite a cost. The cost is about $27,000 to reinstall this. When that sticker shock hit Kelsey and I, we had to remind ourselves, okay, what would it cost to put in new equipment? Well, here was the reminder to us. The limited equipment that you see on the courtyard at the elementary school was $52,000, almost double that. And there's probably about a quarter of the equipment that we would be reinstalling. Some other questions that came up at the time are, is this going to be certified by the company that reinstalls it? And will our own insurance company certify this? Will they insure us with this in? And we found out two things. The companies that had bid on this, if they're installing it, they're putting in new hardware. So they're not reusing old hardware, and that includes clamps, things like that. If they would do that, they would certify it. Tricor, I would reach out to John Gibson. He said, absolutely. If they install it, they're certifying it, then our insurance on our end is good. We're looking at this as the pool has been booming this summer, a great spot for the community, and them using it when you got parents waiting for swim lessons with younger kids. And then, of course, for the school district, you can bet it will be used September, October, November, again, March, April, May, and June. And it really is still in great shape. Needs a little bit of paint, but that's about it. Kelsey, if you want to just maybe talk about the need a little bit more.
Sure. So typically we have had 2 grade levels at a time on the lower playground, which is still going to be part of our plan. Melissa and I finalized all of our lunch and recess rotations. But the playground we have down there, there's really one structure, and that's all we have down there. So for 2 grade levels, that one structure and those 4 swings just don't really cut it. And they only are entertained by balls for so long as well. So our plan is to have the older kids kind of have that ability to be on the upper playground during lunch. So 6th grade, 4th and 5th grade will be up there. The younger ones will be on the lower playground, fenced in. We found that was very important this year as well. But the younger ones still have a second recess with their individual grade levels and classroom teachers where they'll be able to access that playground at those individual times. As much as we can make the lower playground work, just having those 2 separate spaces to have the kids just spread themselves out. We don't have grassy area down by us either. So to be able to have a soccer field, the extra gaga ball pit, our behaviors just went way down when they were able to actually spread out and have more things to do. So I think the kids will be really excited about it. I mean, I'm there at the pool with my daughter. One's in swimming lessons. The other one, we're trying to keep her entertained, and to be able to do both at the same time would be wonderful in the summer as well, especially if we're thinking down the road splash pad to have that addition to the pool as well. It'll be a really nice little area for families in the future.
In terms of the budget, I did provide the board a little bit of an update, and there is a budget adjustment. There were some savings this year, obviously, from the way the programming went, transportation, other things that we were able to save on. Sherry, again, the year end is at hand right now. Estimates, again, a ballpark of about $70,000 that would be rolled over into fund balance prior to this. And so there is some money left in this year's budget in order to be able to pay for that. Timeline, if the board does approve it, CRS, which is obviously the much lower of the two bids that we were able to get, would be here on the 19th, which is a week from today, looking at the project, make sure that they have everything that they need, and then they would reinstall it in August before school started. So the timeline still works for 2021-22 school year.
Did we talk to someone about digging out an area for it?
And Steve has been working with that because he'll have to create the leveling piece that Ryan's referring to when the facilities team committee met on that. We just got to make sure that we have a flat surface, and he's working on somebody to grade that, make sure that it's just right, so you don't have a lopsided playground there.
How much do you expect that to cost?
Steve was anticipating that would still be in less than the $3,000 or $4,000 additional dollars to make sure that prep is where it needs to be.
And then Kelsey, did you say it would be fenced, this area? Or
No,
what
this
do
one
you-
wouldn't, but there would be a border around the playground
Okay.
with wood chips and that, but no, not fenced in.
Okay, good. I didn't know how we'd word that.
And I think that cost included the cost of wood chips potentially as
Correct.
well.
Yeah,
because-
Isn't
gonna
that
say, yeah.
3,000?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because we need new wood chips for the lower playground as well, so they were getting a
Okay.
semi-load for both.
Okay.
It's a big price tag, but I've heard I'm actually shocked that it's that low, having heard other
Playgrounds
we were
being
sh-
installed.
We were shocked that it was that high, but then when we found out how much it is to install brand new
Yeah.
equipment,
I
it
think
seemed
my
like a fairly good
First
deal.
question to Nate was like, do I start a GoFundMe? You know, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know it was gonna be that much, but
The other
It'll-
quote was worse.
yes, it'll be well loved.
And then there's a certain level of liability too, right, that company's taking on, so there's a cost to that as well.
Well, we have to have something for these kids to do.
Yeah.
I mean, we want them to get outside, run around, so.
Community value.
And,
I
and
think it's worth it.
right, exactly, and the long-term planning, right, is the piece that I kept asking about, what's the value add? Well, like Kelsey just said, adding the playground now, future splash pad, in conversations, turn that, it really becomes an entire like family gathering area. for the
This year,
community.
more than any others, I see more cars in the
Yeah,
at the pool than I have in the last 7 years.
and we just need to work on some shade.
Yes. Yes.
All right, is there any other discussion among the board members? If not, is there a motion to support?
I'll make a motion to approve the bid from Commercial Recreation Specialist to reinstall playground equipment on school district property.
I'll second.
Second by Jill. All right, first by Ryan, a second by Jill. All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Any no's? All right, motion passes 6-0.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kelsey.
I'm
And then you
biased
can,
too.
yeah, must stay right there because we're gonna move on to elementary student handbook approval.
And I'll just mention for the next three action items, C, D, and E, that what we tried to do, and I had received some positive feedback on this, is because now that these handbooks have been gone through multiple times by several different eyes, we're only highlighting just those pieces that are changed, so that you can see those and see that the rest was kept intact. So you'll see that in the elementary student handbook, the middle high school student handbook, and then in Wayne's athletic handbook as well. So questions for, again, there's very little that changed there. I will speak to both the staffing issues. So I haven't had any questions on why we're taking out the entire staff list and why we're putting in a link. Remember, these are both live online. But Chris Armstrong, when we have staffing changes, updates those staffing changes pretty quickly online. Rarely do we have parents, community members going to our student handbooks
All right.
to look for the staff. So the fact that there's a link right in there, if they were looking for that, will take them right to the staff directory, and then they can find the person they're looking for.
That is not updated. I mean, it's a static,
Right.
Right.
handbook. That has been this way this whole time.
We did say today that Melissa, Mary, and I met in the office that we would still keep that list. So if somebody for some reason wanted our entire staff list, we'd have it available, but then we'd be able to update it internally and we could share that with people as needed. This would be part of that handbook.
My only question is, the way it is right now, we still have, former staff that I realize you're going to update. Does
Right.
it make sense to leave it there as is, or just leave that part blank until we have?
There's some specific staff in there for certain reasons. Like, do you want to address like the nurse, counselor, why those are still in there?
Yep. So those, you mean the previous staff?
Yes.
Just based on probably when their resignation happened and when we submitted the handbook. But we'll definitely get those updated. They're live, they're Google Docs. I can go in there and double check and fix those right now. Or we didn't have our new staff member, but sometimes when somebody's looking for a specific name, like a nurse or a counselor, they really like to find that name versus, okay, I know a counselor, but I have no idea who the counselor is, but I need counseling services. So
I get that, it's just they're inaccurate right now. I didn't know if it made sense for us to take them out, and then, but that's,
Yeah.
fine. If we don't need to reapprove it.
Yeah.
after-
I mean, that's a big difference from only changing like 2 or 3 to the whole list, which again, we would have multiple
Yeah.
changes this year for sure.
Is your concern just that we're approving it when we know it's wrong?
Yes,
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, and we'll
and therefore, does it have to be
add it.
approved?
I'm
when
sorry, I
we
misunderstood.
update the-
No, we'll get those updated as soon as all the new staff is approved.
All right, nothing else out of the policy committee or anything? Was that didn't go through policy committee, right? Okay, all right, perfect. Okay, then, is there any other discussion among the board on this one? If not, is there a motion to support?
I'll make a motion to approve the 2021-2022 elementary student handbook.
I'll second.
Okay. A first by Barb, a second by Ryan. All in favor, say yes.
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 Any noes? All right, motion passes 6-0. We'll move on right away on to the middle high school student handbook.
Any questions on that one for Kyle or Heather?
Any discussion? No? Is there a motion to support?
I make a motion to approve the 2021-2022 middle and high school student handbook.
I'll second.
First by Barb, a second by Ryan. All in favor, say yes.
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 Any noes? All right, that one motion passes 6-0. And then moving right into the middle and high school athletic handbook approval.
And Wayne is here tonight for a couple of different agenda or discussion items. I did have a question right before the meeting on what WIA changes. So at the very end of Wayne's athletic handbook, WIA updates their athletic eligibility right at the end. So that's updated every year from the WIA. We do get some, if they're changing something major in that, but very little changes. And I don't know if Wayne wants to speak to it, but probably 2021, if we were going to make any changes to the athletic handbook, was not the year to base that off of, given how goofy of a year it was for athletics.
Yeah.
Well, one change that came today through the WIAA was they approved any student athlete that decided to open and roll out last year because of the situation the school district had for presenting their education format, chose to go to another school district because they liked the way their services were delivered different than ours. Now they want to come back to the school district. They're allowing a 365-day waiver for that athlete to come back and have no penalty from leaving and coming back. That's the only new update that I just got today from the WIAA. So it's a good thing. So I don't know if we had any kids in that situation that I can think of off the top of my head, but that's the only new transfer update. Yeah. Yeah, if there's kids that that have done that, we'll definitely have to address that. But it's a positive thing for kids.
Any other discussion among the board? Is there a motion to support?
I'll make a motion to approve the 2021-2022 middle and high school athletic handbook.
Second.
First by Ryan, a second by Jill. All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Any noes? All right, motion passes 6-0. All right, And then on to the 2021-2022 employee handbook changes.
When Kelly, Sherry, and I began to go through this, we had a short list. And then sometimes when you make changes to one section, you find another section where it's referenced, and so that we have to change that section as well. I would highlight probably the biggest change came on page 41 with our life insurance, long-term disability, and short-term disability insurance. And depending on what the board does here tonight, when I get out my summary to staff tomorrow, I will lay this out for them. Have talked to BEA and BEST about changes that could be coming on this. So ETF is our life insurance carrier. And that was sort of the first domino, because when ETF says we're no longer going to cover employees after their last day, we don't have any choice in that. That's the coverage that we have. Then we get into long-term disability, which is a different company, Madison National Life, and their recommendation is very similar. If an employee is no longer active, they are not eligible for that benefit. So that made the second change that you see with long-term disability, which again is a board benefit like the life insurance. The tricky part was with short-term disability. And Kelly and I had lots of conversations going back and forth and then going with the representative. It's the employee that pays for their own short-term disability insurance. But you cannot have different coverages for long-term disability and short-term disability. They have to match. So if long-term disability is going to end at the end of their last day of employment, short-term disability also has to end that day. So our question was, if an employee has already paid this their own premiums, how are we cutting off that coverage? And they said, you can do that, but then it's just going to be the district responsibility to repay those premiums. And that's what we've communicated with at least the two bargaining units on, that when we make this change, again, some of it being dictated to us, we'd have to pay back those premiums that were already paid in on the short-term disability. We checked within the last 2 weeks, we have about 25 or so of our 130 employees that take some kind of short-term disability. They pay the premiums on them. Those were the biggest changes. We did have some, again, if terminology changes, we have to change. If sometimes we try to simplify things, similar to what we did with the handbooks that you just looked at. Instead of having specific dollar amounts, if it goes by IRS code, we just said it's going to refer to IRS code instead of having to go in and update those every single year. So those are the changes that you'll see before you. The other thing that I'd mention about the employee handbook is this is reviewed. Typically, it's been somebody from Boardman and Clark, Rick Verstegen, or it could be Bob Butler if it's something with negotiations, that when we add something to the handbook, those lawyers are looking it over for language. And so that's why we provided just with those sections that we changed. It's 122 pages long, so I don't know if anybody wanted to scroll through 122 pages.
Any other discussion among the board? Questions? All right, then is there a motion to support?
Make a motion to approve the 2021-2022 employee handbook changes as presented.
For a second? Second. All right, a first by Ryan, a second by Bill. All in favor, say yes.
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 Any no's? Okay, perfect. All right, then moving through then tonight, then we'll move moving on to secondary math curriculum adoption.
So you did hear from Mr. Loshaw and Becca Johnson in June. This is a follow-up. In order to get some of these materials in place, we need to make this decision tonight so that they can get those ordered and then also set up professional development. So the recommendation that you see is to adopt, and Mr. Loshaw, you can correct me, I think it's both ways, right? Illustrative or illustrative math curriculum. That will be for grades 6 through 12. And Mrs. Johnson and Mr. Loshaw had provided a justification for the board as to why that final decision was made. I believe Mike had some questions about cost as well. It is the less costly of the two options that were before the board and summarized for the board last time as well.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll add to that question, Mike, was the cost. We wanted to focus the cost on professional development and helping support our students, while Envisions, the majority of the cost was focused on just the materials that they can provide us over 6 years. With Illustrative, it gives us more freedom in how we spend our money. Our hope, so Illustrative is more of an open source program. Everything is available online if we want. We took the suggestions of a group that we could partner with, which is the Mathematic Institute of Wisconsin, which suggested for the first year, get all the materials you need and then figure out what you need and what you don't need. With Envisions, we weren't allowed that. We had to buy everything up front. And especially with our experience with Carnegie and just wanting to be more sort of open and more so we're going to provide our students, our teachers, professional development so that they can make the curriculum what our students need rather than pretty much which the rote curriculum would be of more of a style of Envisions.
Any discussion? Any questions? I am glad to see though, the time spent, on trying to identify, a curriculum that works for the district, that works for the staff and the students, rather than just focusing on a dollar amount too. Granted, in this case, this is a lower cost one, but I appreciate the time that's been went into, looking at what's best for the staffing and the students.
Yeah, and that's what our main driving force, and Becca was great with this, was just figuring out what is going to provide us the best, most support throughout the year. As I think I said the last time, it's really hard. I've implemented curriculum before. It's really hard to implement curriculum the first year. So how much support can you provide so that we do it the best we can? And that's what our main driving, and Becca continued to repeat that. So I don't know if she's on and listening, but good job, Becca.
Yeah, there you go. All right, with no questions or discussion then from the board, is there a motion to support?
I'll make a motion to adopt illustrative mathematics as the secondary math curriculum for grades 6 through 12, effective for the 2021-2022 school year.
Second?
First by Ryan, a second by Jill. All in favor? Say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Any noes? Okay, motion passes 6-0.
Thanks, guys.
There you go. Yeah. All right. Next up then would be the 2021-2022 academic standards.
As part of state statute, we do have to, as a board, you have to adopt our academic standards for the school year. There's some specific timelines for this, so it has to go along with the fiscal year, just beginning a new fiscal year. This is the time of year to do that. In the past, the board has already adopted Wisconsin academic standards, Common Core state standards. That was done a few years ago. And then most recently, but still a few years ago, the next generation science standards. Try to link those for both the board and the public if they wanted to go through and look at those. Some of them, again, are hundreds of pages long. But the task before the board tonight would be to re-adopt these and declare that these are going to be our academic standards for the upcoming school year.
So I get that it's readopting, but I have not read these all thoroughly, though I went in there on, the science one in itself is like 103 pages.
Mhm.
And I lost track of how many links there were on the Common Core. I guess I'd love some input on, because sometimes it feels a little like you're signing a contract without reading it.
Sure.
So can you give us some input as a board, even though it's already there? So I get but still, I just would like to have, as I went into this, I thought, wow, I wish I could get to the core of it. Well, not talking about Common Core specifically,
Yeah.
but the crust of it. What do I really need to know as a board member that we're putting our stamp of approval on? Have any insight or input on that?
The only thing that I would add is kind of as an overview, maybe for those that are listening or those even in the audience that might have questions. So your Wisconsin academic standards, you're really going to get into some content that you're not going to see in some of these others. It would include things like music education, physical education. And our teachers have already, at least at the middle and high school that I'm more familiar with, and things are a little bit different at the elementary, but have for years when they've been given the time to try to work through, here's what we're supposed to cover, here's the courses that we have, how are we going to manage this, going through cycles. And that's part of what Becca is working on with curriculum cycles, is to make sure that because of the breadth, like you mentioned, how much there is there, to make sure that standards are addressed, but then to be most efficient in that. I know Mr. Hodson is on the social studies curriculum team. And so one of the challenges of all the different content areas, though, is to make sure that standards are addressed, but that we're not doing some things 5 times with our students and others not at all. And not only to just cover a standard, but to get some kind of depth of knowledge as well. With Common Core, again, you're specifically talking about really math and literacy standards there. The literacy standards do go very deep and can go across multiple content areas as well. And then, of course, next generation science standards. I have seen the work that 6th through 12th grade has done with next generation science standards, and they really have it mapped out on how students in our school district can get certain standards by the courses that they take in high school. We don't have all of those required, so there's different paths that you can go through, and they know which standards you're going to hit when they go through those. Again, at the elementary school, there'll be a little bit more. This will be coming up actually shortly on our agenda. For quite a long time, we've linked Project Lead the Way to our science standards. There's more to science standards than just Project Lead the Way, and so that'll be some of the work that they do, is to try to integrate those at the different elementary grade levels as well. Not sure I answered your question, Barb, but it's a complex one.
Are you also asking if there's like anything that could be considered controversial in there?
I wasn't, but that's my next question. No, I was just wondering how deep we could go in to be educated about it and yet not read 4,000 pages.
Yeah. And again, some of that is even within a standard. Like we don't have that a lot in our district because we're small and we want to be able to offer lots of choices for our students. We don't have several teachers teaching the same course. They oftentimes, to save on their own preps and to offer a lot of choices, it might be one person teaching one specific class. You know, I'll point to like Mr. Hodson, who's here tonight. Mr. Hodson's the only one that's teaching AP Gov. He's the only one that's teaching APUSH. He's the only one that is teaching freshman civics. If we divided that out, it makes more preps, and then you got different thoughts on that. So it does silo some of us sometimes because you got one person doing that, but that one person does then know those standards really well, what they're teaching, and then what all, for example, freshmen are getting in geography and civics.
And I guess my question, if anything is controversial, it would be Common Core, just as a whole has been controversial over if I understand it correctly, has the standards, which are obviously going to be more general than specific. However, the curriculum is chosen and varies greatly within the school districts, correct?
That's very well stated. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. And then as a follow-up to that, is there anything, maybe Kelsey, you could speak to this, that gives you concern over the years you feel we've improved on, or I partly ask that because I have seen personally some issues with different Common Core curriculums and how that has negatively impacted, and I just wanted to know how you see that.
I mean, the Common Core guides what we do, but it doesn't tell us exactly what to do. So like you said, that broad overview, and a lot of what we've done at the elementary school is build our own units of study. So we don't just have one thing that we pick up and say, this is gold and this is everything that we do. We look at what's most essential, what we've talked about a lot this year, but we have to do that all the time because there is no way that in 4th grade I can cover all the 4th grade standards in a year. It is just impossible. As nice as DPI was to give us all those, it's just not possible. So we have to prioritize and say, okay, this one spans over 3 grades, so 4th grade's going to hit it a little bit more than 5th grade, but we'll touch on it in 4th in both, but this is where we're gonna go. So that's why we build our own units. That's why Project Lead the Way doesn't cover every science standard, so we have to supplement here and there to at least touch on all those, but go really deep on the ones that maybe are in our Project Lead the Way unit. So no, I mean, there's nothing that concerns me about any of those standards. It's just having the time and the ability to actually reach all of them in those
Yeah.
400-page documents. Yeah.
Okay, all right. And I like the individual aspect because then you can fit what needs to fit for Belleville as opposed to.
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
okay, thank you. I appreciate you as well, Mike. Thank you.
Good questions. Okay, with that then, is there any more discussion? Is there a motion to support?
I'll make a motion to readopt the Wisconsin Academic Standards, Common Core State Standards, and the Next Generation Science Standards that are currently in place in the school district of Belleville for the 2021-2022 school year.
I'll second.
A first by Mike, a second by Ryan. All in favor, say yes.
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 Any noes? Perfect. Motion passes 6-0. All right, on to the next agenda item then, be the fall coaching contracts approval.
I know it feels like we just started summer, but next month we'll be into fall sports. So you do see the coaching contracts there for the fall sports. Not much turnaround. Again, some of these sports ended not that long ago in an alternate season, and they're continuing to run summer programs, contact days, and we'll be right back at it in August. And so we're excited. Again, in terms of what might look fairly normal, would be a normal start to the year for athletics and then extracurriculars as well.
Any questions for Wayne or Nate? Any discussion among the board? Is there a motion to support?
I'll make a motion to approve the 2021 fall coaching contracts as presented.
I'll second.
All right, a first by Barb, a second by Ryan. All in favor, say yes.
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 Any noes? All right, motion passes 6-0. All right, and then we are on to the 2020-2021 budget revisions.
Sherry's done a great job at really simplifying what those revisions are. Those are her own notes that the board has access to, and a very simple spreadsheet that you can see. And she says there are changes in certain areas. Again, all this was on revenues, and so you can see that there were a decrease in tax revenues locally, but then small increase in grant, more money coming in from state aid. And then if anybody had questions on Medicaid claims, when we have some of our specialists, let's say it's a speech therapist, occupational therapist, when they are working with some of our special education students, depending on what that specific work is with that student, that can be billed toward Medicaid. You can see some of those revenues went up because of that. Becca, in the last couple of years, has done a fantastic job in making sure that everything that we can bill for is being billed for. And if Becca is on, which she is, we'll see if we have any questions on that. The other thing that you're going to see there is some decreases. And again, we did have some savings, utilities. When you don't have students in a building and you're able to conserve on heat, cooling, lights, that changes some things. Maintenance the same way when the buildings aren't being used that way. And then you can see some in post-retirement benefits. We still have the same benefits, just drawing on those with less than it was in the past. So overall, we thought we might be about $110,000. The plus side, we're actually about $156,000, but right at the end, you have this time frame where you've got things that are still going to be billed to 2000, some to 2020-21, some that have to be pushed off to 21-22. So we're about where we thought we would end up. Thanks to Sherry and, board watching over that. I know many of you look over the bills as they come in, have questions for me. We've again tried to be very conservative this year on with the unknowns. So we're really going to end up right where about we thought we were going to be, just over about $100,000 surplus.
Any discussion on that? Yeah, good news. That's good. Nate, does that take into consideration then the approval for the playground?
So that'll come off of that amount, and that's where Sherry was thinking somewhere maybe around 70 could be rolled over.
Okay, that's where that came from. Okay, absolutely. All right, any other discussion on budget? Okay, if not, is there a motion to support?
I'll make a motion to approve the 2020-2021 budget revisions as presented.
I'll second.
A first by Jill, a second by Ryan, all in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Any noes? No, motion passes 6-0. All right, that kind of wraps up all of our items this evening of discussion with possible action. So now we're moving on to just discussion items. So the first thing up on discussion this evening is a curriculum update on the elementary departmentalization. And I'll let Nate and Kelsey take it away.
Sure. I won't say too much. I know we've had a lot of questions from the board on this. Again, part of what we're going to try to do, which probably hasn't happened a lot, and I know I've talked to Becca and the principals about this, is to try to bring more curriculum updates. It might not be every meeting, but when things are happening, that you hear about it, and then, kind of like the math, you're going to hear about it before you're going to be asked to approve something. A fairly simple overview of what departmentalization means when you get into the upper elementary grades. For quite some time, sixth grade, going back, I think about 8 years or so, has had one teacher teaching a specific content area. I believe you have one teacher teaching social studies and science based on the mix. But that was, again, about 8 years ago, quite a bit different administrative team at that time. But the idea is you'd want a content specialist in those areas, as some of that content became more difficult, especially math and science. To bring that down to fifth grade, and I won't say too much about it, I'll let Kelsey explain and answer questions if you have them. What it does for students is that now you're going to have somebody, and again, it's fairly voluntary. Nobody's being told you're not real comfortable with math, or we're sticking you with math. They've discussed this, and it's going to be somebody that feels strongly that they are a good math teacher teaching math, ELA teaching ELA, same thing for science and social studies. What it also guarantees for the students is that they're going to get the same experience in that math curriculum. So every fifth grader, every sixth grader is going to get that same experience for math. For students as well, that teacher, instead of teaching that one math lesson one time per year, and then it waits a whole year before they teach that same math lesson again, they have a chance, sometimes within the same day, to improve that lesson. It should benefit the students. On top of that, in terms of the teacher and teaching load, most elementary teachers got into this because they like teaching lots of different subjects. What it does, though, in terms of load, in terms of planning, even in grading as well, is you're planning fewer lessons, concentrate on making that a great lesson, and then again get the opportunity to make changes to that lesson as they go. I won't add too much more. They've even, again, experimented even as low as first grade in the past, where you've had two teachers say, hey, do you want to switch? I'll teach the math lesson, you teach the reading lesson for today. We experimented with that low. In terms of implementing this would be for fifth and sixth grade only on a regular basis. So, Kelsey?
Like Nate said, sixth grade has been doing this for a long time, so fifth grade would be the adjustment here. I couldn't have bridged it better than talking about the standards. Like the breadth of standards that we have and how deep we have to go with every grade level explains exactly why we need to do this for kids, because teachers can't be experts at everything. So you're planning 6 lessons a day, and it gets more challenging with every year that you're teaching. And so to be able to specialize in one area and be able to differentiate for kids. So I teach my first hour block, and I completely bombed it for these kids. I know what to do better for my next class, and then I know how to reteach it better tomorrow for that first block again. It just gets them really specialized in their content area and can dig in with those kids. We are also seeing high turnover in 5th grade. Over the past few years, we've had teachers jump at the opportunity to move from 5th to 6th grade because, hey, I get to focus on one thing and I get to see all 6th graders. So rather than just knowing my 20 kids, I get to know 60 kids, but I get to really focus in on my work with them. The ELA teacher has the biggest load by far, and that's something we're working on because they have to do all the guided reading groups or literature discussion groups, plus writing, plus phonics, plus grammar, all those things. So we're talking about how to balance that between science and social studies. So all those research papers will go to science and social studies. And so they're still working on all those different content areas together to balance that and share the standards even across curricular areas. But the other thing that we continue to hear as 6th graders in an elementary school is, we're like the oldest ones here. We don't want to be here anymore. We need to be in middle school, things like that. So to be able to put them in 5th and 6th grade together and give them a little bit more autonomy, they're going to be in their own wing of the school. They don't have to transition in lines and take bathroom breaks and do all the things that function on a normal elementary school schedule. They get to kind of create their own area up there and create their own little middle school in the elementary school. And if you looked at the map, the other thing that we're really excited about is being able to house Kelly Olson, who's our special education teacher for 5th and 6th grade, with both 5th and 6th grade for the first time ever. She's typically downstairs with 6th grade and then has had to travel to the 3rd floor to service 5th grade. A lot of transition time. It's really difficult if kids are having a hard time in class. They have to go all the way down to her room to get support if she's with 6th graders at the time. Same with our new counselor, Stephanie. She's going to be housed right in that area as well. So with the students that she's actually going to be working with on a regular basis. So we're excited about the potential setup and what this will mean for our teachers and our students to really get some specialized instruction.
Any questions or discussion on the board?
So the standards you just mentioned, one of the reasons why is important.
Jill, can you turn your mic on?
Oh, sorry, my mic's not on. The standards are the reason that you mentioned that this is an important change to make. So I guess I'm wondering, now we're asked to do this for 5th grade. Do these standards require a change down the line? Do you envision for like 4th grade or 3rd grade or 2nd grade? I mean, I'm just kind of trying to wrap my head around the idea. Is this something that we're going to be asked to look at younger and younger grades?
You know, this is our first time trying it in,
Yeah.
8 to 10 years. And so it really is like our trial year. If it completely flops this year and the teachers and the students say, we had a really hard time with this, then we reevaluate. I spoke to a number of principals today, even as far as Milwaukee, that I have contacts with saying, when do you do this? When are you starting this? There are schools going younger and younger with this model because the demands of teaching are just growing and growing and growing. And so they're saying, what can we do to keep teachers in the profession while still providing good instruction for our students? So I spoke to a principal today saying that this year they're exploring 3rd and 4th grade. I can't imagine going below 3rd grade. But 3rd grade is when state testing starts. That's when you really amp up your standards. That's when, students really take off in some of their social studies and science lessons more than the primary grades. But I can't imagine every year I'm going to be back here saying, okay, it's 4th grade's turn. Okay, it's 3rd grade's turn. But our teachers see this opportunity. As soon as our teachers heard that we were exploring this, I had 3rd grade teachers saying, can we get in on this? Because they feel it. And I can tell you from our pool of candidates this year, it's really slim. Teachers are really feeling the burden of how much is out there. Spoke to one of the Oregon principals and I said, are your pools of candidates big? And she said, no, we're really having a hard time hiring. And I think this is some of it is because that burden is just so big. So what can we do to make instruction still really sound for kids while making a manageable workload for teachers. So,
Right, I mean, the concern that I have though is when you get into the younger grades, those kids are not as maybe comfortable going to different teachers and moving around.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's just
Yeah.
a different psyche with a younger kid, you know this better than me, probably. So, that's where my concern
no,
comes
and I can't imagine if we tried and did an experimental year in fourth grade or even third grade, what's more common is having two teachers. So one teacher would do math and science and the other would do ELA and social studies. And so they'd only have like their two teachers that they would switch with would be more common than going between four, like in a fifth and sixth grade model.
Yeah, one of the other things that I wanted to mention is I think I have a senior that just graduated, and I think his class was the first class that actually started with the sixth grade. So the way that that was handled, frankly, was not real smooth. As a parent, I wasn't notified that it was going to happen. It just sort of happened. So I'm wondering about how you're going to notify parents. I mean, it's already July. So this is a pretty significant change. So, you know, this isn't an action item tonight. So we would obviously be looking at this in August, right? Or are we, what's your plan here? Do you need board approval?
We
or
don't
you-
need board
Okay,
approval.
so if we seem to be okay with it, then you would be able to start moving toward communicating this change to
Tomorrow.
parents and students right away.
Yep, I already
Okay.
have something
'Cause I
drafted.
think
to go
that's
out to
very
families.
important.
Yep.
Even though, you know, I hear the positives of this change, it's still a change. And anytime there is a change, you know, people just like to have adequate notice about it. So I would just encourage that.
Yep.
And I love the idea of putting the fifth and sixth in their own wing, on their own floor. However you end up doing it so that they're kind of together, I think it's really a neat idea to do that. It's kind of what I was sort of hoping for all along. And I'm glad that you are able to work out. I know that that frosted glass level is pretty low right now. And that was honestly, maybe it seems silly, but that was one of the first things I thought of. You know, if these kids are going to be able to see over that, hey, what's going on over there? You know, just
Yeah.
practical things. And
Well,
so I
and
really appreciate the fact that you were on top of it and you were already planning ahead for that.
Yeah, and right now, between those doors, it's like 3 fourth grades and 3 fifth grades, where now it'll be classes on the outside
Yeah.
with the supports in the middle, but we're still
Which is
planning
nice,
to,
yeah.
still planning to address that. And then there are 2 hallway rooms, which will be science and social studies. It's like the STEM lab upstairs, that'll be science. Yeah, we're planning to frost those up to at least eye level to give a little privacy in
Okay.
those classrooms
Great,
too.
thank you.
Kelsey, just refresh my memory here, but weren't you trying something too with like, you know, kind of some of that focus content too with like Sarah Command and
Katie Faye.
Katie Faye,
Yep.
right?
So that's exactly what Nate was referring to is they swapped for ELA and math to try it as low as first grade
Yeah.
last year.
And what was the takeaways from that?
They saw great growth in their students actually because Katie focused on ELA, so she was working with our literacy coach really specifically, and rather than having her 4 or 5 groups, she had 8 groups of students, so it was a lot to work through. But the things that she learned from one group, she could apply to another, and she said, "I just feel like a better teacher. Like I just feel like I get to plan and focus, and I can really serve my students versus that one ELA lesson, my one math lesson." And same thing, Sarah got some additional math training. She went through some AVMR, like a math recovery type training. So she felt like, hey, I really know what early numeracy is going to look like, and I get to focus my attention here versus balancing my time. And so that's what we're looking forward to as well. Kim Allen will be teaching social studies both for 5th and 6th grade, and then Bobby will be doing science. So we can finally get them into some really good professional development,
Yeah.
have them join the middle school on some of those afternoons on professional development to work on that alignment as well, to get them a little bit more connected where we've been limited in our time and how we can share staff that way.
I just really think you're going to find some stability in that model.
Mhm.
You know, you know, when the more like specialized you become, you just kind of stay in that lane, you know, longer.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I do think that the 6th grade change was a good change
Yeah.
when it occurred. So,
Yeah.
and we've seen growth and all sorts of positive outcomes from that. So,
Yeah.
and there is no way that we're going to be able to build a separate middle school or squeeze them into the middle school. So, you know, the
We're
space
getting
is what we
creative
have.
here.
So,
Yep.
So I have a couple concerns and or questions, somewhat echoing what Jill has said. I hear you on letting the teachers get specific and not have to do all that juggling of numerous subject areas. My concern is for the kids in that developmental age. I mean, there's some of those kiddos that are 10 that entire year. That's young.
Mhm.
And just knowing how they bond to their teachers and how, and I know it's pretty common in the state at this point. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the best for them. So I hear it from the positive side for the teachers, and that is, I can get excited about that for them. I mean, just knowing it, how they're going to build on that and go deeper. I still struggle with it being right for that age level. And then when I start hearing maybe fourth, third, I just, that really worries me as to how. I'm glad the counselor's right in there because she might be really busy for, I mean, just, I've seen it happen where they just, they want to be all grown up, but they're 10 and 11-year-olds.
Yep.
If you can speak to that a little bit
Yeah, so
more.
we still have a morning meeting built in, which will be with their homeroom teacher. So anytime there's a gap in their schedule, there's morning meeting, they have some pride independent time, and then there's pride or, study hall or band or whatever at the end of the day. That'll always be with their homeroom teacher. So they're always going to have that home base that they go back to. But the one thing we found is some kids, not all kids, some kids with one teacher all day long, all year long, it's a struggle because I don't connect, I don't connect with this teacher. And so I'm here all day long trying to get through my day when I don't connect with you. But oh my gosh, I just love Mr. Perry next door and I wish I could be in his class. So I still get my ELA and my math teachers for 80 minutes a day. So they're with those teachers a good chunk. And then they're 40 minutes with science, 40 minutes with social studies. So they still get their teachers for a good chunk of the day plus homeroom. So they're still going to have that homeroom feel and be just as connected. Sixth grade teachers will tell you, these are my homeroom kids. These are the kids that we do morning meeting with. We share about our weekends. We do our daily shares about whatever the topic is. And they're the one that I have to go to ask any of my questions about my grades or to refer me to the counselor. Like they're my home base. And then I can go out from there. But I can tell you some of those kids that struggle with that homeroom teacher. And that's where we see it first is fifth grade. We don't really see the struggle of being with one teacher all day long until fifth grade. But fifth grade is where it's like, well, why don't you go do science with this one next door instead, just to break some of that up because the hormones are starting and all the other things are going on. So to be able to actually have access to different teachers and different teaching styles, we really think it's going to benefit students more so than be detrimental to not have connections. Now I get 4 connections instead of just one that I might not mesh well with.
Fair enough. And I've seen that. But again, you're right. It's not really until 5th grade.
Yes.
So again, if we start
Yep.
looking younger, I would have more.
No, I mean, we would need a lot of research and a lot of prep work to go any lower than this.
You mentioned earlier too, the possibility or some will have a teacher teaching 2 core subjects. Did you give thought to that or?
We did, again, because we wanted to combine 5th and 6th grade, we only have 3 teachers at each grade level. So that would mean that we can't do a 2 and 2 switch. We'd need 4 teachers to be able to do that. And so when I talked to Kim and Bobby about, do you want to do 5th grade science and social studies? And do you want to do 6th grade science and social studies? Or would you rather have one content area? They both said, nope, give me one content area so I can make my alignment work. The other thing that works well with this schedule is they get science and social studies every day now, where previously it was a social studies unit and then a science unit, where now they get it every day all year long. So I think we're adding to their curriculum doing it this way as well.
2 more things, I'll leave you alone.
No, keep going.
One is not about how this rolls out. It's more in the timing of us learning about it. I don't like that it's July and we're just learning about it and it's going to be implemented this fall.
I have to agree.
I didn't get to the agenda till this weekend due to my schedule. Actually, I'm supposed to be in Mexico right now, but that's another story. Yeah, I wasn't even sure I would be here, but to digest this, obviously you put a lot of work into it and I appreciate it, but I feel like we should have been brought along the way so that, and quite possibly the community so that we know it's coming. It is, I agree, we've had a heck of a year and to throw another big change, even though it may be the most positive thing we've done in a long time, people don't like change and they don't like it sprung at the last moment. It feels a little like this, so.
And from just a administrative team perspective on things, again, we're going to try to bring something with curriculum, whatever the update is, the most pressing update. We'll try to bring that back at each board.
Oh, the last thing. the standards, and I don't know how much we can impact, but I would just ask the board that we start considering what we can do to, there are different avenues that we speak to legislation and the standards, and if they're becoming completely overwhelming, we want our kids to be their absolute best, but there comes a point when it's just too much and we lose good teachers, like, we're hearing, because it's just too much. There's only so many hours in the day. We have input on that with, making our voice heard to legislation. So what I would ask is that we not only consider that, as we come into, with WASB, where our voice can be heard, but if you can speak to us and things we can say that would benefit our teachers, our administration, I would be all ears. And I think the others would be as well. Thank you. Kelsey.
Thanks, Kelsey.
I just have a couple more, I'm sorry. And I don't know if it's anything that I just wanted to comment that I think some other positives about what you're looking at doing is the exposure to Spanish earlier. I think that's a positive. I also like the fact that you're looking at fifth grade band,
Yes.
which is pretty exciting, so we can build on the great music program that we got going here.
We are also adding sixth grade help, which we haven't had
Yes.
Yeah.
before. So we're trying something different with the sixth grade rotation. So Tamara Hauser will be not teaching fifth grade PE. Eric Legal will be teaching fifth grade, and then he'll be doing sixth grade help, and Tamara will hold on to sixth grade PE. So there's a little bit of a gap there, but they've had her through fourth grade. And so he'll be teaching that health/SEL. So we planned when it was Mr. Weber that they were going to double up on that, but it comes in a trimester rotation. So it'll be about like 12, 13 weeks that they get that. And then the next rotation will be Spanish for about 12 weeks. And then the next rotation will be app creators, which is a project lead the way course. Typically, Kylie had taught that and it was stretched through the whole year, and it was just there wasn't enough content for the whole year. So we think condensing it just to those 12 weeks will be a lot more effective for students.
And
as
for
well.
those kids that choose not to do fifth grade band, they would be in Pride Block? Is
Yes.
that how it would work?
Yep.
Okay. And the other positive that I hadn't thought of, and I'm glad you mentioned it, is the fact that fifth grade is kind of when kids, maybe they decide that they don't necessarily want to spend their whole day with one teacher. And I hadn't thought about that side of it, and I think that is a really good point. Giving them that little variety for some kids may actually be a good thing, rather than just looking at the fact that there will be a certain segment of kids that may have difficulty with it. Working with those kids to make them feel more comfortable moving around to different teachers, but also taking into account the fact that you've got some kids that really are hungry for that change. So I think it's good that you mentioned that.
It's a balance of that transition too. We don't want too many transitions during the day, but transitions happen constantly within the classroom.
Yeah.
And so now those kids who, they could really use a walk before they start their next lesson. Now they
Yes.
get a quick
Yeah.
walk, they get a drink of water, boom, now we're
That's a
refocused to
good
get
point.
going
Yeah.
again. So,
Yeah, so thank you.
yeah, thank you.
Those are good points, Jill. I'm glad you brought them up, the Spanish and band. And the six, I think those are great.
Any other discussion? All right, then we'll move on to athletic coaching expectations.
Again, Wayne is here to speak a little bit about this. We've had some concerns over the last few years on our athletic coaches, and just making sure that our expectations. I think that as simply as I can put it is, we've got certain expectations for our teaching staff in the classroom, and we expect appropriate behavior, appropriate language, positive relationships to come out of those classrooms. And really the culture that we want to try to develop here in Belleville or Sugar River Raider athletics is similar to that. A coach is an extension of the classroom, whether it's, again, language, behavior, lessons taught, should be something that you should be proud of. You wouldn't want to say or do anything that you wouldn't want a parent to see, a community member to see. And so Wayne, we did add, he'll have a meeting with all the fall coaches. He does this with each of the season's coaches and meets with all of them so that they can hear the expectations across the board. This isn't just about, the cross country coaches or the baseball coaches or, the golf coaches. It's for all of our coaches hearing this together and discussing it as staffs. And so Wayne's provided his agenda for that meeting, which will come up at the end of this month. I will attend at least a portion of that just to reemphasize that. We expect high standards from our coaching, high ethics from our coaches, and really want that to be an extension of the classroom. We don't want to hear about swearing, belittling players. We want it to be a really positive experience, because most of us that have played athletics, yes, we want to win, but when you look back at things years from now, you're probably not going to remember a lot, but you'll remember how that team camaraderie. You'll remember how you were treated. That's important for us here. Wayne, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I just Ed talked about the agenda, those seasonal agendas we have, and they pretty much go through the same stuff with the exception of a couple seasonal change stuff. But yeah, that's been an emphasis the last few years, is the appropriateness of coaching. Now, are all our coaches 100% appropriate? No. But we address those as they have come up through parents or through student athletes, and we've addressed them with coaches and have had pretty good success with at least them understanding what that'd be. And if it continues, there's a clear path to removal of that coach, and they understand that. That's part of our discussion that we have at every seasonal meeting. So
I would add, maybe before any board questions or comments, but we'd love to have coaches that are teachers, because when you have teachers that are coaches, you've got people that are around kids all day. They understand what those expectations are. They have that relationship. We're not always lucky to have that. And so when you have people that might work out in private sector, or where typically their job would bring them into close contact with young people, sometimes it's on our end to try to educate them that this is what is acceptable, this is not acceptable. Try to look at it from a parent lens, from even a grandparent lens. Would you want your son, daughter, grandchild treated this way? How would you want them to remember that experience?
and appropriate behavior. I mean, we obviously, as I've gone through this my career and understand that coaches get younger and younger, there's that fine lines that the coaches have to understand what that fine line is, and I've had to address that with a number of young coaches, not only here but at other schools I've worked at, and that's another big issue is that fine line that coaches have to walk when they're maybe only 4 or 5 years removed from people they're coaching, and that can be kind of difficult. But I'm glad Nate's going to be at coming to the one meeting, and we have it's quite a lengthy agenda that we go through. A lot of times I'll sit down with new coaches and go more in depth with some of those things, because they're, you can only cover bloodborne pathogens so many times with the same coach year after year after year. But some of the new coaches need more in depth discussion about that. So. Okay.
Thanks, Wayne.
Yeah.
Oh, question,
So,
sorry.
yeah,
That's what I meant to say.
I looked at the agenda. What I didn't see, and maybe it's in there somewhere, and I think it's great. Last couple of years, I've noticed a few things. We've had a couple conversations, and I love the idea, or how you phrased it, Nate, that it's an extension of the classroom. I think you set the bar high, and then the coaches and kids can meet that. What I'm not seeing, and maybe you cover it in there, but I'd love to hear about, or if you could implement it, is as whether educators or not. What I would like coaches to grab a hold of is how much positive impact they can have on those kids' lives long term. I know you know that. I know Nate knows that. But is at a point of, if they're not around kids a lot, they can still be absolutely fantastic with them, or they could be a teacher that doesn't quite get whatever age group. I don't know, but I just think it's worth pointing out. We've all heard the stories. Some of them are great from people who had a super experience in high school as a, whatever sport, and some still hold scars from that. And I know they don't need to be there. It's such a great opportunity, much like teaching, to inspire our kids and help them to grow into fabulous young adults. I just would like to have some form of communication that makes them know that we know that, and encourage it in our coaches.
Yeah, it has come up in discussion in those meetings, how important, and I open up that discussion with them saying, how many of you can remember that coach you had in high school that you still remember, that still was a positive influence on you? That's the type of coach you want to be to those kids. And even reflecting on my own high school career in athletics, there's one coach that stands out, and the other ones are good too. But the one that stands out was a teacher, was an educator, and knew how to deal with kids on a regular basis. And that's the hardest part is trying to bring some of those coaches that aren't educators, that aren't dealing with kids on a regular basis, to that level that they need to be, that positive person, and making sure they're doing the right things for kids. You know, yeah, we do have that discussion, and that's kind of how I open it up when we talk about what does it mean to be a coach. And I put together a 60-page document too that coaches can reference. That I just compiled a bunch of references from my career and put it into a manual that they can reference if they have any questions, and they all have access to that information as well.
Is there any training offered to them in any of those areas, like some fun YouTube video that's inspiring or something?
They do have to go through the first year they get exempt from, after that they have to go through a non-licensed teacher to coach session, and they have to pay for it. It's a $30 course through the National Federation on coaching athletics, and it's a online course that they take. It's part of the requirements for all paid coaches that are not licensed to teach. And some of them that are licensed to teach also take it because it's good information. And we go over that as well in the meeting. We talk about the different websites that have access to information for coaches, resources for coaches if they're struggling on a certain topic, what they can look for. I've had a couple of them come up to me, and I've tried to share resources with them as they come up. Hey, I'm struggling in this area with this group of kids, and try to help them out as much as I can with those resources. That's happened multiple times.
I agree with Barb's point. I think that for a lot of these kids, the coaches kind of act as their first boss, more or less. It's kind of the equivalent to that. And it can really be positive or it could be a negative experience. So I'm glad that you had use of profanity pulled out as a separate piece, but I am wondering under the expectations in number 15, maybe adding coach expectations just in general and specific, where you could talk about like what Barb said, the positive impact that coaches play, that there should be an expectation, and I'm not saying do it this year because obviously that ship has sailed, but, maybe in the future adding that is, what are so that you're not just talking about, you shouldn't be using profanity, which should be a given, but also talking about what they should be doing.
And we address that with the expectations. We always ask coaches to try to identify what their expectations are, not only the athletes and the parents, but their parents'
themselves.
Expectations of themselves.
Yeah.
What level they have to be at.
I think that's great. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess all I'm saying is that I would kind of like to see that as a separate, item
Sure.
in the future.
Sure.
Maybe something to think about.
Yeah,
So
oh,
then
yeah.
you could talk about more than just the mention of not using profanity, but you could talk about the positive aspects of coaching and the whole
Yeah.
reason why you hope they are a coach.
Right, and the agenda there is ebb and flow. I mean, we change and add and modify things as things come up. So
Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
good thought.
I have a question about the expectations, section 2. It'd be good to be known as the school that has, pleasant kids, for like, just from the referee standpoint, would be a good one, makes your job easier.
Yeah.
To know that, help other kids up, give the ball back to the ref, so we have a good opportunity to get refs back, and since there's a shortage, and, that goes along with parents as well, I guess, making sure that everybody's on the same page, that we're here to have fun and improve as people and compete, but
Hey.
don't take ourselves too seriously, I guess.
Well, I know that we get a lot of feedback from officials when they see sportsmanship happening on the field on our athletes, or hey, your kids really were positive, your coaches and staff was positive, it was fun to hear them coach. We get that feedback, and I also comment on kids that I see, whether it be whatever game, whatever sport it is, kid knocks down another kid, and one of our athletes are the first one to offer him a get them back up. And I'll address that with the kid the next day. Hey, I saw that sportsmanship you did out there. That was positive. And those are the types of things I also share with coaches. I said, you need to understand the positive aspect of the game in the sportsmanship realm. And we want to be the school that is known as, hey, we got great kids for sportsmanship as well, whether it be from the officials, the visiting team. I don't share those always with everybody, but I do generally share them with the coaches when it comes back from another team, an official, or even some fans have commented on. But there are some negatives that go along with that as well. You get those negative comments as well, and I always share them with the coaches so that they understand where people are coming from and that they're visual. I mean, athletics is the most visual, most public thing we do in education right now. I mean, how many people you see jamming the gymnasium to watch a math test? It's not going to happen, but they're there for a basketball game, and that's what the image they see. So the image of a public venue in athletics is so important, and how that coach and athletes perform, positive, negative, it comes back and reflects on the school. And that's kind of what you're hitting at, I think, Mike, is have that reflection back on the school, and the coaches understand that.
Yeah. Thank you for acknowledging that. I think that's really
Yeah.
important, Mike and Wayne.
I would say we for the most part, we get a lot of positive comments, more so than the negative comments. The things we got to be careful of in this day and age, and as you know, we have the huddle cameras, and they're within yelling distance of some of our fans, and
Right.
so this winter when we had a game on, and I was watching the game online from the comfort of my chair, and you could hear the comments that one of our parents were making about our coach, and I knew someone was in the stands, and I had to communicate to that person. I knew that I had their email or their phone in the stands, and say, please let them know that their comments can be heard, and that we've had that happen before, where huddle cameras pick up those sounds, and you get some feedback from visiting teams or people that are online.
Yeah.
Sometimes positive, sometimes negative. So that's what in the age we're in. I mean, everyone's going to have the huddle cameras or the cameras available, so you got to also watch the P's and Q's in the stands as well.
Wherever you go, you're always on video or
That's right.
audio.
Someone's
This
watching.
day and age,
Yeah.
yes, you are. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, then, that's all we have for discussion topics this evening. We've got a couple of items under boardsmanship. And one of the first topics this evening was to just kind of discuss a little bit about the status of the live streaming. Nate, do you want to jump in, or?
Sure. We always check at the end of each meeting with Mr. Edge, like how many do we have on? How are we doing? During the last one, again, some of that might be expected with summer months, but we only had about 10 viewers on in our last meeting. Couple of other things to think about. And I will say, though, when you go back and look then on YouTube, you can see how many people have watched that potentially after the fact, or have gone back and looked at something that somebody may have referenced. And we did have about 100 views on the June meeting on that. However, given that we have now no restrictions on in-person gatherings, the other thing I just wanted to make mention to the board, if there's any thought about where they want to go with the direction of live streaming, is this is part of Mr. Edge's job. I'm sure as much as he loves this, he's not donating his time right now. So as part of that, if Dave is working some of these hours now, it's either going to be overtime, or it's going to be hours that have to be shifted away from something else, especially in the school year. August gets still a lot of work getting one-to-one devices ready to go. So there's a cost element to that as well. So that's kind of the status that we've had recently. Not a ton of online viewers in more recent months. Still people going back and watching that after the fact. Then you add in the complete lift of any of the orders in early June by PHMDC, and then just the cost factor. It's not a lot of money, but it is Dave's time that's involved in every time that we do a live stream for the board.
Does anybody have any thoughts?
Well, I think, you know, the viewership is down right now, but next week it could be the next hot topic button and we'll have 300 viewers again. And I think a lot of people have gotten a lot of value out of being able to watch the meetings and hear what we're talking about. I think keeping it more accessible is important.
Yeah, I would think the convenience factor is a nice thing to have for people. Even though the restrictions are lifted, I have other things going on that can't get here and just be able to watch it at home or tomorrow, whenever it happens. If we didn't have it live streamed, would we post the recording or?
That is, yeah, that doesn't translate real well. We've tried that before, when we've had people that have specifically requested the audio recording.
You gotta crank it way up.
You do. I had to request it once. There was a meeting I missed and Mike handled that one. And I remember it was a challenge.
Yeah.
I think there's value too. I've heard a lot of positive feedback, and if we're getting 100 views later, even though we're just think of adding 12 more people in the room right now, that's still a decent amount of people that are wondering what's going on.
Well, I think 100 views may not be 100 unique people. Let's be real.
It could
It
be people going back.
Going back. I mean, I've done that where I've had to go back and look at something, not necessarily a meeting for us, but a video. But that counts as a separate view.
We could give updates too, you know, if we're seeing that it's
Yeah.
a trend over many months.
Right.
Because we were, Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think even in the March meeting, we were 200 and some.
Maybe we could just track it.
Yeah, I was gonna throw that out there too as an idea, is maybe let's just throw this back up under boardsmanship in 3 months and kind of see where we get to after the beginning of the next school year. And then kind of revisit with it from there. I see it both ways. I personally do. I see it as, to some in the community, it is a nice convenience factor. And then there's some other issues that have arisen too from having it. So I see it both ways. I think it was something that was born out of necessity through COVID, to help keep the community informed. At the same time too, after going through that, of COVID and the experiences and stuff that we've had come out of it, I would also encourage, who can attend to come join us as well. Because I think there's still things that are missed that aren't quite clearly translated through, the recordings.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I think it bears looking at over time and seeing what the numbers are. It is a nice convenience, I think, for people. But I also think that if the work of what the school board is doing is important to you, then come to the meetings too.
I would love to see
That's-
us get more people to come to our meetings in person.
Yeah.
That'd be great. And also, I mean, I don't want to, I know kind of nickel and diming here, but $60 is $60. And we have, 12 meetings.
Sure.
And then when we have special meetings, those are streamed.
Right,
Are they
those that I, especially if they're online,
Mhm.
if they're virtual, then I can do that without, Dave
Okay.
still preps me, but I can do that.
Yeah. So Dave streams the ones that obviously we're here to attend in
Correct.
person. Yeah. And
And managing.
maybe we won't have as many special meetings. I mean, pandemic is hopefully, waning here, so.
But yeah, and to Joe's point too, right, is that, we value Dave's time. We value a work-life balance, as well too, for every employee whenever the district can, try to offer that up. But more importantly so is just, the work that Dave's got to do in his daily job, than to be here in the evening doing this, or, so we either pay that dollar amount out or, we compensate Dave with some time off, then that work is getting delayed.
Yeah. I could also reach out to staff, because my understanding is that we do have quite a few staff that are on or will watch it after the fact as well, just to stay informed.
Yeah.
I know Mr. Hodgson will sometimes grade papers to a board meeting as well.
Yeah. There you go.
Call me.
But on another note, though, I am pretty sure I can speak on behalf of the board and say that we do appreciate everything that you put together, Dave, for these recordings, and I don't think we've thanked you, said a thank you to you for that.
Thank you.
Oh, that's an idea.
Is he cheaper?
Yeah. No, maybe it is something worth exploring, or, from a
Great.
time or time, so it's alternate, too as well. So are we in a general consensus to maybe revisit this in 3 months and see how we're trending?
That'd be fine.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Sound good, Nate?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Unless I missed something else on the agenda, we're on to just talking about some future agenda items coming up for August.
Yeah, we may have audit results back. The audit still hasn't taken place yet, so again, we've got to have the results back and have it taken place by that time. We will bring a general PD plan to the board in August. You'll get to see at each building what those plans are for those Monday in-services, and then even some of our Wednesday after-school meetings. You'll get a first peek at an initial budget, what that may look like. You'll also have extracurricular advisors being brought at that time, mostly about 5th and 6th grade up at that point. Bus driver contracts, and then Marie will be here with a communication plan. There's actually a report, year-end report from Taher, and then Marie will be here as communications director with a report, but also some of the communication plan, some of the goals for the year that she has. She and I think right now have about a list of 7 or 8 of them.
Sorry to interrupt, but was there something else that we were going to talk about with boardsmanship? Or were you going to send us more results from that?
Yeah,
Oh,
in,
the personality.
yeah, in terms of the personality test, I have mine and one other. So if you have done that test and you want to send them to me, then we can
Okay.
collate those together and you can take a look at the others.
You might want to send the link back up again, because I think it was just on last month.
Sure, I could do that.
Then future board meetings will, the next scheduled, regularly scheduled board meeting would be August 9th. Don't believe that we have anything otherwise planned. Is there any
No committee
committees?
meetings, at least planned right now.
Yeah. Give the board a little bit of a break. All right, then with that, contemplate a motion to convene in the closed
Can I
session.
Throw
Oh,
in one question.
yeah, go ahead.
Did you say ACT results are coming next month too?
I don't have that. That was in Heather's principal report in a previous one. You want a highlight of
I
that?
was just trying, I just
Okay.
had it on at the last.
She does have ACT Aspire, so we will have
Okay,
all
okay.
those that came in after
thought you said
school year.
something about- okay,
Yep, you got
great.
it.
Thanks.
Anything else, Barb? Okay, I just want to make sure I saw you writing, so I didn't want to cut you off. Okay, all right. All right, so contemplate a motion to convene in a closed session under Wisconsin statutes 19.85 paren 1 CF for consideration including action, if appropriate, regarding employment, promotion compensation, or performance evaluation data of potential employees. Reversement, promissory note, discussion, and potential action regarding parental complaints pertaining to staff conduct. Is there a motion to support?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
First by Ryan, a second by Jill. All in favor, say yes. Yes. Any noes? 6-0. All right. Thank you, everybody, for your time this evening.